Okay, hi everybody. Sorry, I'm a little late. So, hi Gail B, hi Robbity Bob, hi Sean Sneed, hi LMNW, hi One Eye Blind Arts, hi Robbity Bob, hello Kevin Leonard, and hello Flower Girl Phillips. Let me see. Debbie L. And what's this here? Nana T. I'm not in live chat, which would be really good if I would do that. Okay, and Mark, okay. Whisper to me. Okay, everybody. Hi, Nana T. All right, so let me get. Hi, Kathy in LA. How are you? So, Isabel B., I'm going to tell you a story tonight about something that happened in 2008 in literally the next town from me. And it was probably, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. Remember I told you, if you remember that I told you this story, okay, then in the chat, just say, I remember this, or I don't remember. I told you about this one town, right? I said, and they had a lot of issues. I told you that there was a restaurant, and Jimmy and I went for our first date there, and probably like our 10th or 12th anniversary. We wanted to go again, and I looked it up, and it had closed, and it closed because there was a tragedy there. They were doing a renovation, and they removed their stairs to their basement, right? And they were open as usual, and there was nothing on that door. And that door just happened to be placed near the doors to the bathroom. And the woman said to her husband, excuse me, I'll be right back. I'm going to go use the ladies' room. And the next thing he knew, she chose the wrong door and went right down the stairs. Not down the stairs, sorry. Where the stairs should have been, fell and died. So you might remember that. And then they were sued to close the restaurant, whatnot. The other thing I told you about this town is that there was a hotel, and I think I showed you pictures of it. And I told you that the owner of this hotel that was a restaurant, that I knew him and would frequent the restaurant a lot. And he was like a pillar in the town, this guy, okay? Well, he was at the end of the night, I'm only half on screen, even like this. Oh, gosh, thank you, Kevin. Thank you for telling me that, Kevin. You know why? Because I wanted to see something earlier, and I had to make something big to see what it was. Okay. How's that now, Kevin? Wow, that was crazy, right? Sorry if you were tuning in for the first time and you thought we were just crazy there with the thing. So anyway, if you remember these stories that I told you, okay, and that he was cleaning a gun and showing it to a friend at this bar, and this Western hotel is like a historic hotel. I think I've taken video inside there once when I was walking around town. I did. And the bar's long. I know I did. Fairly certain I did, because we just ate there last summer or something. But anyway, now I'm like really freaking out. Did I really do that, or is that was in a dream? Because I think I had a dream about this place, and that just brought it back to me. But that my daughter and I did walk around in there. This is crazy. I hate when that happens, when I'm telling a story and then I don't know it's something that was a dream. But I don't know if I took the video or not. But I showed you pictures. And he was cleaning the gun, and he shoots the waitress bartender right in the chest and kills her. Okay? Kills her. And he only served 6 months because he said it was an accident, and because good old boys network is what a lot of people felt. Now, hi, Earthbound, you going to bed? Okay, good night. Then I told you about another story, remember? And I said it was around 3 restaurant establishments and these horrible things that happened in this town. And the third one was, I told you, it was in our newspapers every single day. I mean, that's not every single day. They print twice a week. 2 times every week was about this story. And I didn't remember the details of it. I thought she said to her husband, I thought it was called Lisa's Autumn Inn. And I thought there was a husband and wife. And the husband said, I'm going to go home now. It was at the end of the night. And she said, I want to clean up a few more things. I'll be home after. But now I think I remember that he said his wife was in the back seat. And when he got to the house, she wasn't there. And then they found her dead on the side of the road. And they don't know how it happened. And he was never charged. And I want to look into that case too. But that's not the case I'm going to talk to you about. We might go into that later. But the one I want to talk to you about is about a paramedic and his wife. Okay, so there was this woman, Catherine Lane was her name. She grew up in Queens. She grew up in Glendale, Queens. Her parents scraped by, but they put them into private school, and she put herself through Marymount Manhattan College. She really just wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and volunteer in the community, you know, and all of that. And it looked like she was going to get her dream. But her first marriage ended in divorce. It didn't last long. She dated a few other people. She trained to be an EMT, but she wasn't strong enough to pick the stretchers, the gurneys up. So she ended up doing something else in that field, but not actually being a paramedic, okay? And then she went to a barbecue for the ambulance corps. And she met a paramedic there. And his name was Paul Novak. And he was a big guy. He had a beard. You know, some people thought he was a great guy. Her mother thought he seemed like a great guy. Okay, his parents had immigrated to America during the Cold War. The mother was Austrian. The father was Hungarian. And Catherine's mother thought he seemed like a nice guy. But then other people in hindsight said, you know, something was wrong with him. He was a little antisocial and this stuff, right? But anyway, they decide, this is before the pandemic boom with everybody moving up here, but they lived in New York City, they lived in Queens, and they heard about properties up here and homes, but they were never part of the in crowd, okay, that moves up here, the ones that either buy properties and flip them, you know, or the ones that are sitting around the river or the lakes or the fire pit with the wines purchased on the Main Street shops. They were never of that crowd, okay? But she did make friends with another woman that had moved up from the city. And at one point, they both had a kindergartner in school and a toddler at home. The difference was that Catherine loved it. There were different problems than the city. There were septic tanks that had leaked on Catherine and Paul's son's christening day that her mother remembers, and that Catherine was making all kinds of excuses, you know. And then there was the weather and vehicles breaking down, and like up here you have to have your brakes repaired, not replaced all the time because of the amount of hills that we live on, and you're constantly braking, so it kills your brakes. And then there's Deer Crossing, which right now it's not even peak, and you can't even get your car in to be repaired if someone would do that now, because it is at the peak, and it's not supposed to be yet. It's like peak, and it's not. So they don't even know what peak is going to be like. So anyway, they traded a different set of problems. But Catherine was still going to make it work. Unlike that friend that was up, that friend said, no, we're going back to Manhattan. We're just going to come up here on the weekends. And she kind of lost touch with Catherine, even though she came up on the weekends, because she was only coming up on the weekends. And Catherine was engrossed in church volunteering. She volunteered in the school. She got a seat on the board. She was very engrossed. And they had a daughter, Natalie, and then a son, Nicholas. And the son was born in 2003. They got married in 1997 on Valentine's Day, just a courthouse wedding. Now, after 9/11, they put their flag on their porch, and people might have thought that Paul was a hero, being an EMT. Maybe he was a first responder, and he would show up at school events in his FDNY, EMT badges on himself. So he was looking, and he's a very large man, tall. Let me put up a picture. Let me put up a picture so you can see who I'm talking about. That would be helpful, right? Yes. Where's my pictures that I had here? I'm just going to go get them again. I had my pictures all here. Okay, this is them on their wedding day. And I'm sorry that I said I thought it was just as a piece. They did get married in a church. It was just that they didn't dress up. Okay? She didn't dress up in a dress. They are in a church here. This is a member of the clergy. Sorry about that. They did get married in a church. And this, again, hold on a second. No, this picture's from their recommitment. This picture right here, hold on, this is not the wedding picture. I'll get you the wedding picture. This is the I have this labeled wrong. This is the recommitment ceremony that happened in 2007. Now, let me tell you to remember the year 2008. Okay? So this is the recommitment. Let me get their wedding picture. Hang on. Sorry about that. Okay. Leave that. There is one over here. Thought we had one over here, but let me see. Here we go. This is the best I'm going to get for you right now. This is an earlier picture of them. Okay, so we'll go with that picture right now. So where were we in our story? So they got married in 1997. They moved to upstate New York, but he's still an EMT. So he's spending about 3 to 4 nights still staying in Queens. And she's up here with their children, which she was okay with, okay? And they lived, out, especially back then. There were less and less that lived, around, and there weren't as many people now after the pandemics. There's so many people that live up here now. But, yeah, they lived in a very rural place, and I'll show you where they lived. And it was out here. You might see that something's missing, right? Something's missing. Well, we'll get to that. So they moved out there, and then she didn't run into that friend for a long time, several years. That friend moved back to Manhattan, and she was coming up on, one weekend. She's packing to get back to the city to beat the traffic. Her friend's name was Nina Burley, And she turns around and there comes Catherine with her now 9-year-old, her oldest now being 9 years old. She comes up to her and she says, "Hey, I need a job. My husband's having an affair." And Nina described it as, she gave a little light laugh with it. They talked for a while. And then Nina said she had to get back to the city. "I will get your resume around in into her HR." And that was it. But that was the last time that Nina had ever seen her. On December 13th, the reason you don't see anything here or something's missing is because the house was on fire. House caught on fire. It burned down. December 13th, 2008. The neighbors across the way, as they got up to make their coffee, saw the house engulfed in flames. Now, you notice that there are not a lot of neighbors around, right? That's how it is. A lot of places up here. But the flames were so intense that even people like on another road thought the sun was coming up from this. So the fire department comes out, right? By the time they got there, the structure was collapsed. They needed a backhoe. They had to get a backhoe, clear the debris, and they find Catherine. She's in the basement. She's lying on the floor. Now the dog, Aladdin, also perished. Aladdin was locked in a kennel. The children, Natalie and Nicholas, were in Long Island. You see, because they separated, they divorced. He paid her $1,700 a month child support, and he got an apartment out on Long Island. And let me tell you, there was some woman a very voluptuous younger woman, I believe she was 25 years old, and she, let me get you her name, I don't want to, spacing out on her first name. I know her last name, but I want to give you the first name too. Okay, her first name is Michelle LaFrance. Very voluptuous 25-year-old. Now, she was completing in the fall of 2007, so roughly a year and a few months before this house burnt down. She was completing the paramedic certification program at Stony Brook University, and she had to do a stint on an ambulance. Well, it just happened to be the ambulance of Paul Novak. Michelle was born and raised on Long Island. Her dad was an Avis rental car executive. She'd been volunteering in ambulances since she was a teenager, but she was a troubled person, okay? She attempted to unalive herself at the age of 15, and by the time she turned 20, she had a lot of things wrong with her, including cardiac arrhythmia, fibromyalgia, and premenstrual distress disorder. She took a lot of medications for this, including painkillers and antidepressants. So when she was assigned to the ambulance of Paul Novak, and Paul Novak's partners, well, one of them was a man named Press is his last name. Let me get you his first name. I'm spacing on his first name too now. Too many things in my head. I think it was it Scott? Let me see here. Let's see. Well, we're just going to call him Mr. Press right now. I can't remember his first name here. I'll get it. So she went out on the ambulance with them. And she was really excited about procedures and things. So when she first intubated a patient, the ambulance, somebody on the ambulance, she immediately texted Paul Novak and she said, "Hey, I got my first intubation." And then they met for drinks, and that was their first kiss happened then. So in January of 2008, that he backdated his separation, and that was supposedly the first time they were intimate with each other. In March of 2008 is when Paul Novak told Catherine that he no longer loved her and that he had never loved her. And then a few weeks after that, Michelle LaFrance calls Catherine's house, and she did it in the middle of the night, and she asked for Paul. And then Catherine knew what was going on, right? So that's how that marriage ended. So like I'm a little bit all over the place with this, but I'm just trying because you have to bear with me, and you're probably ADD and you understand it anyway. So she moved in, Michelle moved into the apartment with Paul out in Long Island. And Paul, according to Michelle, badmouthed Catherine like crazy, calling her a fat, ugly troll and a terrible mother. And that she said that Paul and Catherine fought all the time on the phone about money and the children. And he constantly threatened that he was going to file for custody of the children. So we've got that. But Catherine eventually wants to vet this woman that her kids are living with. So she actually goes to a diner and has lunch with Michelle. And they even shop for a birthday cake for Nicholas. So it looked like, okay, well, maybe, I don't know, it's going to be okay, whatever. Maybe he'll get over his anger. A lot of divorces, people are angry at first and they learn to co-parent, coexist, yada, yada, right? So she was living out here, as you can see, kind of in the middle of nowhere. Now a single mom, husband's not even coming home a few nights a week. And she never really made a big deal to anyone in town that, oh my gosh, maybe I'm going to move closer to town. Maybe I'm going to move back to Queens or anything like that. No, she was going to stay right here. The only thing she did is she had all the locks in the house changed. Okay, so his keys or codes or whatever wouldn't work. She had everything changed. And in town, everybody knew Catherine as a great mother. Okay, she took care of her kids. She took 2 part-time jobs at the school and a local church camp. She told everyone she was saving up for the kids' college funds. And she even had something they showed in court where she had the children, Natalie and Nicholas, perform these little fire drills, and she videotaped them, and they were played in court during the trial. So she was very concerned about everything. And again, before she let her kids go stay there with their father, she took Michelle out to lunch and then got to know her a little bit, all of that. But Paul, a glimpse into Paul showed that while they had a lot of runs on the ambulance and things could be very exciting, they could also be big lulls. And it was testified to that during some of these lulls, some of the EMTs had sex in the ambulances. But one of Paul's partners, who was out with him a lot, said that Paul had an addiction to porn, and he was constantly going to the best areas while waiting for another call to download porn, and that it was almost as second nature to him as somebody that looks at MSN News. He was constantly, he could not get enough of it. It was constantly, and the partners said it was kind of like he was filling this void, but he could never fill it. So he is living with Michelle. Catherine is living over here. December 13th, the house goes up in flames. Were things suspicious? Well, here's a couple of things that were suspicious. The dog was never put in the kennel except when Catherine left the house. She never put that dog in the kennel when she was home. So why was the dog locked in the kennel? The second thing was it was determined that the dog died of smoke inhalation. But Catherine didn't have enough smoke inhalation to die from. So then they started to look and say, well, maybe when the structure collapsed, that's what killed her. And that was it, tied up in a bow. Okay, another mystery in the town. That's a little bit crazy, but you know what? It's not the first one. And that was it, okay? And Paul collected $800,000 in a life insurance settlement. And he took that money and he moved with Michelle to Florida. And he purchased a nice house. It had an in-ground saltwater swimming pool. And they thought they were going to be living the life down there. But what happened is he and Michelle started to fight. And their relationship deteriorated. And she ended up moving out of that house that she was sharing with him. She dated a few people. She finally ended up dating a sheriff's deputy down there. And she tells this sheriff's deputy this story. And the sheriff's deputy says, you have to call the New York State Police and you've got to speak to them. So she calls the New York State Police. And they fly down to Florida and they spend 6 hours talking to her. And then they go and build a case. And 6 months later, they arrest Paul Novak for the murder of his wife and arson and other charges. So what happened? Well, what he did was they had the kids with them. And Michelle said she gave the kids Benadryl so that they would sleep through the night. And he had talked to other paramedic partners, and they testified that yes, paramedics, they see a lot of things. And some people that do see the things that paramedics see, and it's proven, they can joke about these dark things amongst themselves because it's so horrific. And it's kind of like how they deal with some of it. So there was some dark humor. And so they would, talk about, they said Paul would talk about what's the best way to get rid of a body. And Paul said fire was the best way to get rid of a body. And it seemed like he put feelers out to someone that would help him with this plan he had, right? But his partner, Mr. Press, didn't want to. So he was looking around, and he finally found somebody that would help him. And it was a big guy. The guy was 6'9". And the guy had a lot of problems, including psychiatric problems, bipolar disorder. He was taking meds. And his name was Ed Palmer. No, that's not Ed Palmer. I'm sorry. Scott Sherwood. Ed Palmer's the one that testified. Scott Sherwood. Okay, so he had a lifelong battle with bipolar disorder. He took a lot of psychiatric medications, and some of them were Adderall, Seroquel, Trazodone, and Celexa. and people knew this, but he had this emotional response to a lot of the things that they, had to go and be first responders to. Like if it involved children, he would get very emotional. He'd break down, he'd cry. And, the other paramedics would be like, come on, you can't do this. We got to get through this night. There's going to be another call. You got to pull yourself together, right? He had a bad divorce, and he was very emotional about it because he felt, gosh, he got short end of the stick, and he had all this child support, and he didn't get along with the ex-wife, and it was constant fighting. So the way that Paul Novak approached him was by saying, hey, look, I've got this situation. Could you help me out? And Sherwood thinks like, well, I don't want my buddy here to go through this crap that I'm going through, so maybe this is the best way to do it. And if you remember, I've told you before, like when you have more than one person that sits around and says like, oh, yeah, hey, this is a good idea. Let's do this. Like when we talk about Photos Dulos, Michelle Draconis, Kent Mawhinney, when they're sitting around there with this and not one of them says, yeah, okay, that's the end of the fantasy, guys. We're not doing that. But they all decide to do this. You really question how, I don't know, about the number of sociopaths, psychopaths, the number of people that do this kind of stuff, and then you're going to get 3 of them together. So Paul started to do research because Sherwood said he was in for it. He's going to help him. He's helping out his buddy. And the plan was to make this look like an accident. And it involved the house fire, but it involved chloroform. And the chloroform was going to be what he used to kill her. So the 3 of these people, and if you study the testimony, you'll know that Michelle is on the stand saying that the 3 of them stood around a table with a variety of chemicals, a bowl, and lots of ice, and they made chloroform. And on the night of the 12th, the 3 of them, after giving the kids Benadryl, they drove up there, and they even stopped at a Walmart on the way, okay, because they left things like to the last minute. And Paul bought, a hat, like a beanie type hat. He bought a pair of suede gloves, and he bought some duct tape. Now, this is the part that's a little bit crazy, because the week before, now remember, she had all the locks changed. So the week before, he made a ruse about coming to pick up a motorcycle, because Paul Novak loved motorcycles. And he even brought a video to work of him riding in rural upstate New York, going 160 miles an hour on a motorcycle. And he spent a lot of money on motorcycles, and I forgot to tell you this part of it. He filed for bankruptcy the year after they were married. Now, Catherine was an accountant before she had kids and moved up here. And she was very good at balancing books, and she was very frugal. And the other paramedics couldn't even believe it when Paul said that he was marrying her, because she was so different from him. And she never had a problem with debts. But in 2003, she then filed for bankruptcy. So there was a lot of money being spent, and he was buying a lot of motorcycles. But there was also the fact that not only were there the problems with the sex in the ambulances and the porn stuff, there was testimony that prescription medications and abuse of them played a factor here, was a factor here. Paul was allegedly abusing medications, right? Okay. So they give the kids the Benadryl. They get in. They go to Walmart. On the way, he buys that stuff. And then they drive up to the house. And they wait. He gets his chloroform. But the chloroform doesn't work. Now, Sherwood sat in the car and waited. And then Paul Novak came out of the woods and said, "It's done." Excuse me, I am so sorry. Hold on one second. She didn't go on the ride. It was just Sherwood and Novak. She made the chloroform. Okay? She made the chloroform and she knew about the plan. That was her problem. And she was the expert witness. She was the Kelsey Barrett. She was the one that knew about this, didn't tell anyone. And it was the same kind of situation that they had to give her immunity for her testimony. Could they have proven his guilt without her testimony? I don't know, maybe, but they weren't willing to take that chance. So they granted her immunity when she came to them and spoke with them for 6 hours about this. They granted her immunity and she told this story. So he says it's done. The house is on fire. He gets in the car and they drive back to Queens. And when he gets back to Queens, he tells Michelle, it's done. And a week later, he tells her all the details about it. And he says that, oh, I know where I was. I was in the middle of telling you how he got in the house. Sorry, I'm so sorry. All the locks were changed, so he makes a ruse about a week before, says, I've got to come to pick up a motorcycle, because then I got in the motorcycle story. But what he did was he went down in the basement and he unlocked the door. But, I can't imagine this, because how did he know she wouldn't go check the doors to see if they're locked? So I think he did something else to assure himself that he'd be able to enter. So I don't know whether he grabbed a key or whatever, but this is what Michelle said, that he made a ruse that they were coming up to pick up a motorcycle, and in that time he went into her house and he unlocked the basement door that he would then enter the house with. So he lures her to the basement by setting off a fire alarm. She comes down to the basement and he tries to kill her with this chloroform that they made together, all three of them. She doesn't die, okay? She doesn't die. She more than doesn't die. She's screaming and begging for her life. They're rolling around on the floor together. She's saying, think of the kids, think of the kids. And he's saying, I'm doing this for the kids. I'm doing this for the kids. Horrible last moments, right? He cannot kill her with the chloroform, so he strangles her to death. He strangles her to death, lights the house on fire, gets back in the car with Sherwood, drives back to Queens, tells Michelle, isn't funny that both ladies were named Michelle, photos is in this one. He tells Michelle, it's done. A week later, he gives her all those details I just told you about. And I guess when she sat there and thought about all of that stuff, that's when their relationship took a big downturn. And she started to drink. And she started to drink herself into oblivion, I guess, to forget what happened, what he told her, what she knew was going to happen, when the reality of it set in. And she got so drunk one night that she stripped herself naked and walked into a neighbor's house. Neighbors called the police, and it took 6 officers to handcuff her to a tree. And then they got her to a hospital, and she couldn't even remember anything that happened. And she said living in Florida was a nightmare. It was supposed to be paradise with them together, but it was horrible. And they were thinking when they were down, we saved the kids. We're going to be living happily ever after, and it was horrible. And so that's how she ended up as the expert witness. And then some of his partners testified, but his attorney, is actually an attorney I know very well. His attorney, who's deceased now, put his 14-year-old daughter on the stand. That attorney there, said that was going to be their killer witness, the defense's killer witness. So what she said was that her mom and dad loved each other, and that the last time she saw her mom alive, she was hugging her dad goodbye, and the little girl, 14 years old, was weeping as she was speaking. Some of the evidence that they had, well, the jury heard what his ex-girlfriend Michelle LaFrance said, right? But they also had a picture of Sherwood's license plate speeding through a toll on the George Washington Bridge at 6:39 a.m. on December 13th. Plus, the prosecution had a killer witness who was Elise Hanlon. She was from the New York Fire Department, and she started dating the Sherwood guy who was driving with Novak around 2004, which was 4 years before this fire and the murder. They ended up getting married in September 2012. 2012, when Paul Novak thought he got away with murder. But it was actually 2 weeks before Paul got arrested. Now, this woman knew that her boyfriend, Sherwood, drove Paul Novak to Narrowsburg. And 2 weeks after the fire, she testified that she confronted Paul Novak, and he admitted that he killed Catherine, but she never called the police because she didn't want her boyfriend to be arrested. The verdict for Paul came in on September 27th of 2013. It was almost 5 years after Catherine was found dead. And the jury of 8 men, 4 women found Paul Novak guilty on all charges, including first and second degree murder. They found him guilty of arson, burglary, grand larceny, and insurance fraud. When they read the verdict in court, he showed no reaction. He showed no reaction when Michelle took the stand and described how 3 people made chloroform. He also had no reaction when his daughter cried on the stand. And his sentence was life without the possibility of parole. It was a really crazy case for a lot of the people that were up here. And the problem is, this was a very long trial, and the jurors had to, stay away from jobs that they really needed. And so it was very hard for them to understand. And one of them said, this is coming from the madness of a paramedic world known as Jamaica Hospital, where you would have 3 bipolar, sex-crazed adrenaline junkies. And they're talking about Paul Novak, Michelle LaFrance, and Sherwood standing around making this chloroform and then doing this, right? This is just crazy. So he would have gotten away with murder, but he didn't. He didn't. So let me show you. Let's see if I have any other pictures to show you here of the house. I have some more of the house. This is the road that led up to the house, and you can see it's in the middle of nowhere. And this is Paul Novak in court. That was when he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. And on the stand, when Michelle was on the stand, the prosecutor said, "Did he, Paul Novak, tell you anything about what he needed to do to Catherine before December 12th? And she said that he needed to kill her. The prosecutor said, "Did you do anything to stop it?" She said, "No, I did not." She was weeping. But her testimony on the stand wasn't all just like weeping. She had moved from being cocky, teary, obsequious, and sometimes she couldn't remember things like what Paul Novak discussed his plan was. And she said she just went along with it, hoping that it would make life easier. So you've got two people there that one says it was after the fact that she learned it, Novak's girlfriend and then wife, and then Michelle, who knew it before. Let me see. Let me go back to some photos. Here's the some photos of the house. That's Paul, and that's his attorney, Gary Greenwald. But let me tell you, Paul, this is not a public defender. Before his death, he had a reputation not only in the county that Paul and Catherine lived in, but probably in this area of New York down 3 counties or so. He is extremely expensive, but he has a reputation for winning. And I guess Paul was there. I know that I believe it's his mother and his sister back here. So he spared no expense on his defense, but it still didn't work. Did not work. And let's see, I believe this is a picture of, yes, this is a picture of Scott Sherwood and Paul Novak. Make that a little larger. And I'm sorry I can't see the chat if you're talking to me, because I'm, trying to pull out files here and stuff. Let me tell you a little bit about so when they were arrested, let's see here. Sherwood was 40 years old. He joined the ambulance service in 1998, and he still worked for a Jamaica hospital, but was suspended, of course. Like I said, he had a lot of psychiatric issues. He was divorced. He filed for bankruptcy in 2006, and he listed almost $350,000 in debt. Novak was charged with arson, and they were living in Flagler County, Florida, again, they bought a house. He bought a house in 2009, and he had a new girlfriend. I forgot to tell you that one. One of those women sitting behind there was his new girlfriend. He met her on Match.com. Yeah. And yeah, that was his new girlfriend, and she was standing behind him. Let me see what I can tell you about his new girlfriend. She was a software. Let me see here. I'm going to tell you what his girlfriend. Okay, so after Paul Novak's arrest, the Florida Department of Children and Family Service put Natalie and Nicholas in the custody of Novak's mother and new girlfriend to keep them in the same home and schools. That was something that Catherine's family didn't challenge because they were worried about further disrupting the children's lives. And his girly friend, I know they met on Match.com, and she was a software engineer. I believe she was in software, but some kind of software business, but they did meet on Match.com. And she did stand by her man. But I will tell you that Michelle, one of the reasons she also went to the police, she was terrified that he was going to kill her once she left him. And would think she was having terrible nightmares and everything about it, that she thought she heard him coming in and it wasn't, and it was night, So that was another reason she went to the police. But she only went to the police after she started dating that sheriff's deputy, and he told her to call the New York State Police when she told him the story. Let me see here. Just want to see if there's any. So Paul, his appeal was denied. He gave him his sentence here that he will never see sunrise on a free day in his life. Paul's still in jail as of 2021, serving his sentence. I wonder if the girlfriend is still with the children. And remember, they had that renewal of their wedding vows, right? That was the year before he murdered her. One of his friends said about Paul that it was all about him all the time. Other EMTs, big burly guys who were just like him and had no interest in getting to know Catherine's friends or in socializing with other couples. He spent what little money he had on himself. He bought the latest gadgets and he splurged on a flat screen TV, all the while insulation was coming out of the walls because the walls were falling down. So that's what I'm saying. They didn't fit in that crowd of these people that fixed up their homes and socialized. No, their home was in disrepair because he was never doing that, and I guess they didn't have the money to hire anyone to do that for them. Let me go to the radio. So here's a little more insight. Catherine's friends recalled her as ecstatic in early 2007 because Paul wanted to renew their wedding vows. It was such a big deal to him, and he was so excited. They wanted to believe their friend, but they all thought Paul was doing it to placate her. And then it was like that on another morning when she came into work. She got a job, like I told you before, at a local summer camp, and she announced that Paul had just taken out a life insurance policy on her. It was weird, she said, but she did what she always did, warping it into proof of what a good family man Paul was. And within a few weeks of their vow renewal, Paul tells Catherine he doesn't love her anymore. And on any of the rare nights when he returns home, he'd sleep in a guest bedroom and not with her. Confidant said she begged him to go to marriage counseling. He agreed. He went twice before telling her, "This isn't working and I quit." So after that phone call came in from Michelle, Catherine kicks him out, and that was all he needed. He went to get that apartment and he moved in with Michelle, etc., etc. Paul didn't attend Catherine's funeral. He dropped the kids off at the service and he picked them up. He did the same at the gravesite. He walked them up to their mother's coffin, and then he left them with Catherine's family, and he made them all come looking for him when it was over. And so what happened to Scott, right? Scott Sherwood, let me tell you. They were both scheduled to begin trial in July. And let's see what Scott, Scott was. He didn't get off scot-free. See which Scott Sherwood. Let me see what he was sentenced to. Okay, so let's group this. Okay, so I'm just looking at the file here for this. So Ms. Hanlon was the woman that was married to Scott Sherwood. She testified on the trial in the People's Direct Examination that defendant Paul Novak told her in casual conversation that he murdered his wife. Defendant contends, however, that when defense counsel Gary Greenwald interviewed Ms. Hanlon with attorney Kroll's consent, Ms. Hanlon indicated on the phone that was not the case, and she only heard about the allegations from Michelle LaFrance, Novak's ex-girlfriend, who testified earlier in the trial for the people. According to the defense, Ms. Hanlon indicated that she was afraid of being charged with perjury and also expressed her concerns to attorney Kroll. At trial, defense counsel cross-examined Ms. Hanlon at length. Defendant argues that to categorize attorney Kroll's expected testimony as being used for impeaching Ms. Hanlon's testimony and therefore collateral is in error. Defendant argues that the testimony goes to the issue of whether Novak committed and confessed to the alleged murder and is therefore a direct issue. So Greenwald got her to say that she didn't say that. But on direct examination, the complaining witness acknowledged that she had given a prior inconsistent statement during a taped interview at defense counsel's office, and she explained the inconsistency as the result of conversations with defendant whom she married while in jail prior to trial. In an effort to assist him, on cross-examination, counsel pressed the witness, repeatedly asking her whether he had encouraged her to lie before the taped interview, and finally she admitted that counsel had encouraged her to lie. The record shows that it was counsel himself who interjected his integrity into the proceedings. The complaining witness's motive to fabricate during the taped interview was a collateral matter with no independent relevance and no bearing upon any material aspect of her direct testimony. So, yeah, they got her too. So then it is even more pertinent that they had to give Michelle immunity in order to convict him. Now let's see what's going on. So here's another thing that in 2013, an FDNY EMT lieutenant is still on the job even though she admittedly lied to investigators to cover up her husband's involvement in an upstate murder. So the wife was still working there even though she testified. So I wonder if she's still working there. So what did he get? Scott Sherwood. Let's see about Scott Sherwood's arrest. He was arrested in connection with a 2008 homicide. He was 40 years old, like I said, when he was arrested, and he was arraigned. Let's see what happened to him. So what was he sentenced? Okay. Sherwood confessed immediately. He pled guilty to conspiracy, and he testified against Novak, so he took a plea deal in a promise. Let's see what he did. Of no more than 12 years in a state prison. So Sherwood took a plea deal, testified against Paul Novak. And let's see if I wonder if he's still. Let's see here. Here's another picture of Scott Sherwood going into court. Big guy, remember he's 6'9", right? So he described his description in court. He tearfully apologized at the end of several hours of testimony. He admitted to knowing of the plot to kill Catherine Novak. He said he knew it about a week prior to her December 13th, 2008 death. Extensive portions of his September 27, 2012 confession to state police was played for the jury. He told investigators that his own nightmare divorce made him sympathize with Paul's bitter impending divorce with Catherine and his child custody issues and financial pressures. On the confession that was played, you hear investigator William Young asking, "Why did Paul kill Catherine?" And Scott answers, "So he won't end up like me." The investigator, William Young, says, "What do you mean?" And he says, Scott Sherwood says, "Work 8 hours a week and be miserable." And Sherwood pled guilty to conspiracy to avoid a trial on second-degree murder charges. His testimony was consistent on the major points with what Novak's former lover, Michelle LaFrance, described to the jury earlier in the trial. Sherwood said that he arrived at Novak's Glen Cove apartment at around 9 p.m. This is December 12th. And he was led by Paul up to the attic, where he saw Michelle by the washer mixing liquid in a bowl of ice. I asked what she was mixing, Sherwood said. She told me chloroform. Paul said it should be enough to knock her out, but we need more ice. The prosecutor said, did he tell you what the chloroform was for? And Scott answers, yes, to knock out Catherine. He says that Paul sent Michelle downstairs to get more ice, and that Scott left to wait in his Blazer, and Paul told him to leave his cell phone, take out the battery so it couldn't be tracked. About 40 minutes later, Paul Novak gets into the SUV and they drive to Middletown, New York, where Paul Novak says, hey, stop at the Walmart here around 1:30 a.m. That's when they used to be open 24 hours a day. I go to that Walmart all the time. Sherwood drove to the far western Sullivan hamlet of Lava. Novak had him park behind a barn out of view. Then he got out of the car. Paul Novak put on blue paper surgical scrubs. He taped his ankles. He put on gloves. And then he disappeared into the darkness. He came back 45 minutes later. He said, it's done. And the prosecutor said to Sherwood, do you know what he meant? Sherwood said, yes. Sherwood said the two men sat in the SUV. After a few minutes, Paul says, oh, shite, the fire didn't start. He told me he had broken a gas line. He said, I gotta go back. Paul Novak leaves, returns 15 minutes later, telling Sherwood that he lit the fire from the outside that time. They waited 5 more minutes until Paul was satisfied that the house was burning. And then Novak drove most of the way back to Long Island, stopped once at an abandoned gas station on the Palisades, where they dumped the Walmart bag that had the surgical scrubs into a large trash bin, and once to gas up before the George Washington Bridge. And the prosecutor asked, did he tell you anything else of what happened in the house? Scott Sherwood answers, he said it was a difficult situation. Prosecutor says, did he say how? Scott answers, yes, because the chloroform didn't work and he had to strangle her. He said Catherine asked, why are you doing this? Paul replied, for the kids. Prosecutor says, you remember this? Scott answers, vividly. Prosecutor says, and he had a struggle with her? Scott answers, yes. Trying to see here. So let me see here, because there was a so sure was trying to see something because he was supposed to get no more than 12 years. I just saw something. Oh, Scott will be serving 3 to 12 in state prison for his role. 3 to 12. What did he get? What did he get sentenced to? Here we go. Here's another picture. See something here. Okay, so it looks like he was sentenced. Sherwood. Okay, so let's see what this is. Scott will be serving 3 to 12 years in state prison for his role in the murder of Paul Novak's wife, Catherine. Paul was sentenced earlier that year to life in prison. Let's see. If it wasn't for Novak, Scott Sherwood would never have been involved in a crime like this ever, the prosecutor said. Prosecutor said Sherwood has taken responsibility for his role in the murder, and he praised his lawyer, Ben Greenwald, okay, that's Gary's son, for getting his client to make a deal, even at the price of damaging his relationship with his father, Gary Greenwald, who represented Novak. Isn't that something? He said Sherwood was manipulated by Novak, with whom he worked as a paramedic in Queens, first to participate in the crime and then to keep him from making a deal. I'm an adult, I'm a man, and I have to take responsibility for what I was part of, Sherwood said. Judge Frank Labuda, I could tell you a story about him, struck a tough tone in his remarks before imposing the sentence. He reminded Sherwood that he helped to take a mother away from her children. What are Catherine Novak's children going to do this Mother's Day, Labuda said. Go to her gravesite and put a daffodil on her grave? Labuda told Sherwood he will have to live the rest of his life with what he did and someday explain his actions to God. You don't have guts or courage, Labuda said. You're a coward. You allowed yourself to be manipulated. Live with that every Mother's Day. Let me see if Labuda is the one that it happened to. There was some kind of really bad controversy with one judge. I want to see if it was Labuda. It's ringing a bell for me. I believe it involved a four-wheeler or something. Yeah, I knew it. The judge that was on this case ran over his brother. I'm not joking, okay? I'm not joking. But he was cleared of the charges. It's just crazy. There was an ATV crash, and it happened on his brother's property. His brother was injured, and then there was like this big thing where they think he did it on purpose, but then they took him off the bench. Let's see, he's back on the bench after almost 7 months. Let's see what happened. After an ATV crash that injured his brother, but then there was a big controversy about that. Like I said, and then they reinvestigated it, okay? Here, let me see if I can pull it up here. The State Attorney General Office will investigate the facts and circumstances surrounding the ATV crash on the property of Peter Labuda involving his brother, Sullivan County Court Judge Frank Labuda. Peter Labuda was injured in the Sunday, September 25th incident. Peter Labuda alleged that his brother intentionally ran him over with the vehicle. Sullivan District Attorney James Farrell made the decision to request a special prosecutor within 48 hours of his being notified of the incident, and he requested the Attorney General handle the case on Tuesday, September 27th. And isn't that funny? Tuesday, September 27th. It was September 27th of 2013 when the jury came back with that guilty verdict for Paul Novak. Farrell said that while he believes his office could have handled the case fairly and impartially out of an abundance of caution and to avoid the appearance of impropriety, he requested the Attorney General take over the case. The Attorney General and the state police will conduct an investigation, with the Attorney General having the power to prosecute any offenses resulting out of the incident and will have full prosecutorial powers on all matters related to the incident pursuant to the law. So yeah, there's lots of controversy all around there, but it was clear to the church. Anyway, I hope that that was not too convoluted of a story for you to follow everything, but I get all over the place when I'm telling a story. Let me see where I don't know where you are. I can't find the live. Where did the live go? There it goes. I just saw it. Hang on. I just saw the live. There we are. So, people are still here. Good. Those stories are wild. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff, but did anybody ever know about this case? Did you guys ever know about this case? I think we talked about it. We might have talked about it, but not as this. I don't think so. But my mind has been crazy lately, so I don't know. How that dream about that Western hotel came back to me, and yes, now I remember it was a dream. But it really was the hotel. I think I might have even told you guys about it on a live. Very interesting. Julie says, dark but interesting. Hi, Julie. Hi, Carolyn P. Hi, 80s girl. Too many crazy people. I know, right? 3 people making chloroform, thinking this is okay. Not one. That's what amazes me. That not one says, okay, all right, this is good fantasy, but we're not doing this crap. Thanks, Nana T. You did not hear of it, right? Yeah, I'm sorry I jumped around different things, but you found it interesting, Robbity Bob? Yeah, it was a crazy case. Crazy case. Should we look at what's going on? What was I going to say? Something else big. Well, we know about Alex Jones, but the Parkland shooter, life in prison, right? You heard that? Life in prison. Oh my goodness, there's, wow. What's going on here? Five people were shot and killed by a gunman Thursday in a Raleigh neighborhood perched along the Neuse River Greenway in the east of the North Carolina capital. One of the dead was an off-duty Raleigh police officer who was reportedly sitting in his car when the gunman opened fire through his windshield and driver's side window. Raleigh Mayor Marianne Baldwin told reporters that 2 other people, including another officer, were also shot but did not suffer life-threatening injuries. Baldwin said that police have contained the suspect in a residence in the area, but neither she nor Raleigh Police Public Information Officer Lieutenant Justin Vornio provided more information about the situation. They promised another news conference later this evening. All of us in Raleigh right now need to come together, the mayor said, her voice breaking. We need to support those in the community who have suffered a terrible loss of a loved one. Wow. She said we must stop this mindless violence. And speaking of mindless violence, two fathers are in jail after playing a game of cat and mouse on a Florida highway before opening fire and shooting each other's daughters. A 5-year-old girl was shot in the leg, and a 14-year-old was hit in the back. on US 1 in Callahan just after 6 p.m. Nassau County Sheriff Bill Leeper said during a news conference on Monday the two men were identified as William Hale, who's 36, of Douglas, Georgia, and Frank Allison, 43, of Callahan. Both men were charged with attempted murder and have since bonded out of jail. Witnesses told police that the two men were driving erratically and brake-checking each other in a highway version of cat and mouse. The witnesses called 911 because he thought something bad was going to happen. And it did. Hale pulled his black Dodge Ram alongside Allison's gray Nissan Murano and began shouting for him to pull over. A passenger in the Murano flipped off Hale, and someone inside the Ram threw a water bottle into the Nissan. Allison grabbed his 45mm handgun and fired a shot at Hale's truck, and he struck the 5-year-old daughter in the leg. Then he stepped on the gas and sped away, and rather than taking his wounded daughter to the hospital, Hale pursued Allison, emptying a clip from his Glock. As he fired out his driver's window, 3 rounds hit the Nissan, including one that struck Allison's teen daughter in the back, which collapsed her lung. Neither vehicle made any attempt to head towards a hospital, but instead continued speeding along on US 1 until they saw the Nassau County Sheriff's vehicle and pulled over. Hale and Allison got out of the car with no apparent concern for their wounded daughters, and they began fighting. The deputy broke them up and called for emergency services, who took the wounded girls to the hospital. Thankfully, no one was killed in the incident, but it could very easily turned out that way because 2 people were acting stupid and let their tempers get the best of them. In Vermont, a Vermont man was arraigned on SA charges after DNA testing reportedly proved that he fathered a child with a 12-year-old girl. The victim who was impregnated at age 11, gave birth in June. She allegedly tried to hide her pregnancy with a belly harness. She initially told police that she was not sexually active and that she had a penchant for sleepwalking, and that attributed to her stomach being chubby despite not having her period since December. The Child First Advocacy Center in Rutland County got involved in August after the girl's father told the Brandon police that he got photos of his visibly pregnant daughter. The father also said he has joint custody with the mother, but he has not seen his daughter since May because the mother was withholding visitation. During the girl's pregnancy, Brandon police allegedly advised her mother to seek medical attention for her daughter and her unborn baby. The same day it was confirmed the girl was approximately 38 weeks pregnant. During subsequent interviews, the 12-year-old allegedly identified Richard Welch, 46, as the only person who could have fathered the child. She reportedly still denied having relations with Welch, describing herself as a heavy sleeper who may have been SA'd while sleeping. Meanwhile, Welch allegedly told cops that the victim got into bed with him on multiple occasions and said that he sleeps naked. He then claimed he had erectile dysfunction for some time. Welch also stated that the victim did not like going to her father's house, but he did not explicitly say that her father AR'd her. The girl's mother allegedly stated that she believed her daughter was impregnated while with her father. However, an affidavit alleged that the girl's mother also mentions an instance in which Welch, this is gross, did something orally with one of her kids and she laughed at it. According to reports, Welch and the girl's father submitted their DNA, and it was concluded that Welch fathered the baby. Welch has pled not guilty to aggravated assault, and he remains in jail without bail. Wow. Disgusting. Okay, and we have an update on Kylie Rodney. I can't wait to hear the conspiracy that will come out of this, but Kylie Rodney, a 16-year-old girl who went missing after a large party by a California lake in August, died accidentally by drowning. The Nevada County Sheriff's Officer coroner made the ruling after completing an autopsy and other tests. The ruling is based on the pathologist's finding that her death was the result of drowning and that there is no other information to suggest that she was a victim of foul play. Rodney was last seen at the party near the Prosser family campground in Truckee on August 6th. Excuse me. Hold on a minute. Excuse me. On August 6th, along with as many as 200 other people. She texted her mother at about 12:30 a.m. I'm just going to grab a drink. I've been talking and talking. I haven't had one drink of anything. To say she was headed home and reportedly also called a friend to say goodbye, but she disappeared after leaving the campground. An intensive search ensued, but nothing was found until an independent diving group, Adventures with Purpose, found a car not far from the campground in Prosser Lake on August 23rd. They believe it was Rodney's car, and a body believed to be Rodney was found inside. The coroner confirmed the identity 2 days later. So the coroner did not say if a toxicology report was done, and if so, what it showed. The sheriff's office asked for privacy for the family, not to reveal that. From the maps of the location, it appeared that Rodney likely made a wrong turn, leaving the campground, and drove into the lake in the dark. Her car was found upside down in 14 feet of water. Okay, now there's, what's going on here? Chris Watts is, someone is coming, okay. Bruce Spence, how come we never heard about a Bruce Spence? Who's this? Some apparently faker insider? What's going on? Why is he in the news like crazy now? Let's see. The investigators in the Chris Watts murder case have spoken publicly for the first time, explaining how Watts finally confessed to killing his wife and 2 daughters. Well, we saw that. Their speeches delivered in front of 200 social workers, prosecutors, educators, and medical professionals was their first public comment about the Watts family murders. The intent was to educate professionals how to identify and combat domestic violence. According to Coder, Watts finally confessed that he killed his family during a 6-hour interview. Well, we saw this after he failed a polygraph test. Once his family was found, he confessed to everything. Coder said he knew he had no other choice but to tell us what he'd done. Let's see. Trying to see if there's any, but they're saying that, hold on, they're saying that there's another guy, but he's nowhere in the discovery, Brian Spence. So who is verifying this Brian Spence? I don't even believe this. Let's see what a former coworker said, that Chris Watts was clearly unhappy in the weeks before he killed his pregnant wife and 2 young daughters. Things changed. He changed, Brian Spence said, a contractor who worked with Chris Watts for several years at Anadarko Petroleum. I watched him get more and more unhappy with his life. He went from being a friendly guy to being withdrawn and angry. Spence said Watts began to quickly lose his temper over little things. This is the lie. Was irritable with contractors and could be combative. Spence says he didn't know what caused the change, but suddenly Watts was more likely to go out with the contractors for repair afterward. This is such a lie. This is such a lie. And he'd be the last one to leave. Oh, this is such a lie. I can't believe People Magazine put this out. That I didn't see this coming. I knew he was unhappy, but he's not the first unhappy guy in the world, and most of them don't kill their wives. Watts was having an affair with a coworker. He didn't talk about his affair, said Spence, but he was always like this or, oh, come on. This is so fake. This guy said that Chris Watts was telling him this or that chick wants to bang me. But I didn't know what was actually happening. I thought it was just talk about People Magazine. Wow. Are you kidding me? Spence said it was obvious Watts was in pain, and if he only knew how bad things were going, I would have pulled him aside and said something. Oh my gosh, this sounds worse than these YouTube people that make up stories. Are you kidding? There's that. I can't even believe that. What shame on them. They didn't even vet it. He wasn't even in the discovery. What a crock. What a crock. Okay. Hi, Jeanette. What's going on? What are you talking about, Jeanette? You're talking about something happening to you or in the world? Can I move myself here? I'd like to. So who do I have to put in the sleepy room? I think Nicole. It goes in the sleepy room. I think if you're here and not asleep, can you please say aye?
Aye.
Oh, Gail's up. Okay. Christy? I don't want to wake her up if she's sleeping. Oh, she's up. Okay. Sharon, are you up? I know Sharon's got to be up. Linda. Oh, Nicole's back. Nicole, are you there?
Hi.
Hi,
This is
Deborah.
Deborah.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi.
Hi, chat.
Please
Hi, panel.
prayers for Margot because she's really sick with the virus. Okay, guys? Hi, Julianne. Oh, you're talking about true crime and the monsters? Oh, okay. Yeah, it's horrible, right? So, let's see. Hi, Debbie L. Hi, One Eye Blind Arts. So what did you guys think about anything in that chat? What happened? Oh, we didn't finish going over, I don't think we finished, right? Did we? I don't know, let me see. We finished that one thing and that was just, they were bringing, I was like, why are they bringing what's up again? Let's see if there was anything else. Hold on. Oh, what's this? This is something. Where did I just see that? Something's making noise back there. hold on a minute. Hold on a minute, guys. There's something out of Baltimore. Where did I just put that? Oh, and then I know what we're going to do. I have something else that'll break up all this bad news. Just hang on, Jeanette. I'm going to have something that will take. Okay, so we've got that. Baltimore County firefighter Megan Warfield, who also volunteers for Bowley's Quarters Fire and Rescue, had been on administrative awaiting the birth of her third child earlier this month when she was involved in a multi-car collision. She and her mother were heading home on October 4th after hosting the annual golf tournament in memory of her father. She checked on her mother first because she had been driving and then realized that the car in front of them had flipped and someone was trapped inside. So I got out and kind of just went over and reassured her. I held her in place until additional pieces could get there. Other firefighters, police, and medical personnel, including her boyfriend, paramedic Joshua Dougherty, the father of the baby that was about to be born, soon arrived, and Warfield stepped back and evaluated herself. And then I realized I was cramping, and I was a little uncomfortable, and I was dizzy. We got down at Johns Hopkins, and I had some contractions that entire night, and they decided our little Charlotte was due to come into the world. The chief fire officer for the Bowley's Quarter Volunteer Fire Station was surprised to see Warfield on the scene. He was even more surprised when she told him she was involved in the accident. It's not uncommon to see our volunteers on the scene, but to see one that's been on administrative duties only laying in glass and oil trying to care for someone just weeks out of her due date, it blew my mind. You don't see that every day. As for Warfield, it's just what you do, she said. It's just first instinct to me, you know? I'm a firefighter for Baltimore County, so I just kind of went right into that. What's the first thing to do? Assess the situation and how I can help and get additional resources as quick as I can. It still wasn't easy, she said. I don't know how I did because the cramping was so bad. I must have been running on adrenaline. Less than 24 hours later, the family welcomed baby Charlotte, who joined siblings Ellie 6 and Jameson 5. Well, there's some good news for change, right? Okay. So the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office in Alabama is asking for help to find a teen girl whose picture is shown who disappeared last month. McKenna Joy Purvis is 19. She's been last seen off of Inspect Drive in Valley Head on September 26th, and it's unclear where she went from there, and it's unknown at this time if anyone else was with her. Here's some other images. Okay, so she's described as a white female, 5'4", 100 to 120 pounds, hazel eyes, red hair. Anyone with information should call the DeKalb County Sheriff's Office, 256-845-3801, or just call 911 if you can't remember that number. Hope she's found, alive and well there. So let's look at poor Quentin Simon. Chatham County Police Department announced Thursday that they believe the Georgia toddler, Quentin Simon, is likely dead. Police Chief Jeff Hadley said during the presser that all evidence points to Quentin being deceased. His mother, Liliani Simon, is considered the primary suspect, although no formal charges have been filed and no arrests have been made. Sadly, we still have not found Quentin, Hadley said, but our search and investigation will continue. It is with with every available resource we have in order to give Quentin's family closure and see that justice is served in this case. Hadley didn't divulge any information as to where they think the child's body could be. He added that no additional information is available at this time as it could compromise the integrity of the investigation. Okay, let me see here. I just saw something. Okay, and there's another missing woman. It's here. Arkansas police are asking the public to keep an eye out for a 35-year-old Fayetteville woman reported missing. Fayetteville Police Department says Stephanie Breton, who was reported missing from Fayetteville on October 11th, the clothes she was seen last in is unknown. She's described as a white female, 5'4", 120 pounds, who has long brown hair and brown eyes. Anyone in Stephanie's whereabouts is asked to call Detective Odell at 479-587-3520. So on Thursday, a Florida jury recommended life in prison for Nicholas Cruz, who killed 13 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in 2018. The 12 jurors heard testimony in Broward County from July 18th to October 5th about how Nicholas Cruz carried out this mass shooting that killed 14 students and 3 staff members. Defense attorneys attributed his murderous behavior to fetal alcohol syndrome. In Florida, the law is that a defendant can only be sentenced to death if a jury is unanimous and they conclude that various aggravating factors are present and they supersede any mitigating factors. A defendant will receive life in prison if a single juror does not vote for death. The 17 counts are separate, meaning Cruz could be sentenced to life for one slaying and death for another. Cruz was present in court. Jurors deliberated for about 7 hours before reaching a decision. On all counts, jurors unanimously found that various aggravating factors existed. However, in each instance, one or more jurors concluded that mitigating factors outweighed the aggravating factors that were presented by the prosecution, and their verdicts were for the following: for the murder of Luke Hoyer, life in prison; for the murder of Martin Duke, life in prison; and for the murder of Gina Maltato, life in prison; for the murder of Alex Schachter, life in prison; for the murder of Alana Petty, life in prison; for the murder of Alyssa Al-Haldaf, life in prison; for the murder of Nicholas DeWart, life in prison; for the murder of Helena Ramsey, life in prison; for the murder of Christopher Hickson, life in prison; for the murder of Carmen Shentrup, life in prison; for the murder of Aaron Feiss, life in prison; for the murder of Scott Beagle, life in prison; for the murder of Meadow Pollock, life in prison; for the murder of Kara Longran, life in prison; for the murder of Joaquin Oliver, life in prison; for the murder of Jamie Guttenberg, life in prison; for the murder of Peter Wang, life in prison. A New York principal testified at the trial for the death of Thomas Valva. He's the Suffolk County boy that was allegedly abused and killed by his father, Michael Valva, who's currently on trial for the child's murder. East Norwich's elementary school principal, Edward Shiner, testified Tuesday that 6 children from the Valva and Polina family — Angela Polina is the stepmother at the time of Michael Valva, Thomas's Valva, stepmother at the time of death, and Michael Valva's wife. The principal said he knew the family well, including Thomas and his 10-year-old brother Anthony, who were both autistic. The principal said that within the span of one school year, Thomas's brother Anthony lost 20 pounds, adding that their food had been monitored. Further, he said both children were initially potty trained when they started school, but both eventually started attending classes in pull-up training diapers. 43-year-old Michael Valva told a 911 dispatcher on January 17, 2020, that Thomas had fallen on his face and lost consciousness. Valva, however, allegedly forced Thomas to sleep in an unheated garage in sub-freezing temperatures at their Long Island home and ultimately led to the child's death. The boy allegedly had no mattress and was forced to sleep on bare concrete. Thomas was pronounced dead at the Long Island Community Hospital on January 17th, 2020, around 10:28 a.m. The principal said both boys would consistently show up to school with bruises and scrapes. Meanwhile, the boys' behavior began to change. The school flooded CPS with calls about concerns for the children, which resulted in Michael Valva threatening to sue the school for harassment. Michael Valva's defense attorney, John LaTurco, told the court that despite any allegations of neglect, Michael never wanted his son to die and isn't guilty of murder. Everyone needs to be focused on not the neglect child endangerment, but rather the depraved murder charge. There is no evidence to show that Mr. Valva wanted his child to die. Eventually this month, prosecutors told the jury last week that Thomas and Anthony suffered years of abuse at the hands of their father, often arriving at school with bruises and scratching and hungry. They were observed at school literally eating crumbs off the floor, said the Suffolk County District Attorney Laura Newcomb. Newcomb also related a text Valva sent to his now fiancé, his ex-fiancé, 45-year-old Angela Polina, said that I will beat them until they bleed. It's the only thing that works. Valva's attorney laid the blame at Polina's feet, saying she constantly told him he was being too lenient with the boys and that Valva was desperate to make things work. He painted her as the wicked stepmother. You are making them too comfortable, she allegedly told Valva. Let them be uncomfortable. That will teach them to control themselves. Valva, Lapinta said during his opening statement, never even thought that either of the boys could die from being in that garage. When Valva arrived at the hospital to see his son, he had no emotion. Again, Lambert continued during testimony, there were no tears, there was no emotion, recalling when the suspect saw his son in a bed at the Long Island hospital. Someone, his staff member, came in the room and asked him if he needed a drink or a chair to make a phone call, and he turned and said, no, I've been in more stressful situations. The trial is continuing. Texas authorities have arrested a man of shooting his ex-girlfriend's mother and tying up her brother in a shed after the mother asked him to move out of her home. James Cody Sweetman, 29 years old, was charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and unlawful restraint after his arrest on Wednesday for the October 4th incident. The affidavit with the arrest warrant says that Sweetman's ex-girlfriend had broken up with him and was hiding from him. And he had been staying at the family home in San Antonio, but the ex's 43-year-old mother asked him to move out. On October 4th, he was reportedly moving his things with the assistance of the ex-girlfriend's 17-year-old brother, when he taped the boy's hands together and locked him in a backyard shed. And then he went into the home with a rifle and he shot the mother in the abdomen and the hand. She was taken to the hospital for treatment. He fled the scene and was not located until this week, and he has been held on $100,000 bail. A 22-year-old man in Northwest Georgia was arrested this week and charged with breaking a 3-month-old girl's neck and trying to smother her twin sister. Unbelievable. This is like that guy that went in the hospital, right? Robert Terrell Dubois Jr. is charged with aggravated assault and cruelty to children. According to a warrant filed in the case, he initially put a pillow over both of the little girls' faces because they were crying. There's no word on the condition of the two babies. but they were born 5 months premature. Unbelievable. Those children survived those odds, and he does this. The attack on the girls took place on October 3rd. He was arrested October 11th. Investigators didn't say how or if he's related to the girls. I hope they're all right. I mean, I don't know how, but it's horrible. He's in the Floyd County Jail without bond. Let me see if I can find out. Let's see. I don't know. Hopefully there's a miracle. They'll be all right. It's terrible. Okay. Okay, now Ohio. A self-proclaimed Ohio incel pled guilty this week to planning a mass shooting of as many as 3,000 women out of hatred, jealousy, and revenge. A federal grand jury indicted Trey Genko, 22, on charges of attempting to commit a hate crime and 1 count of illegally possessing a machine gun in July of 2021. He pled guilty to attempting to commit a hate crime and possession of illegal weapons, according to the U.S. Department of Justice. According to prosecutors, he planned to carry out a mass murder on May 23rd, the anniversary of the day in 2014 that another self-proclaimed incel, and an incel is an involuntary celibate who blames women for their inability to have meaningful relationships, killed 6 people and wounded 14 others outside a University of California Santa Barbara sorority house. Elliot Rogers shot and killed himself after his rampage. Prosecutors alleged that Genko frequented incel websites from 2019 July till March 2020, mid-March, when he was first arrested. In one post, he bragged about spraying women and couples with orange juice in a water gun, and a trick also used by Roger. He wrote a manifesto of his grievances, and in 2019 he bought a bulletproof vest and a hoodie with the word revenge on it, knife, cargo pants, tactical gloves, 2 Glock 17 magazines, a 9mm Glock 17 clip, and a holster clip. According to court documents, he described his January 2020 manifesto, titled Isolated, as the writings of a deluded and homicidal, and signed it, Your Hopeful Friend and Murderer. He allegedly surveilled an Ohio university on January 15th of that year and searched online for tops like planning a shooting crime and when does preparing for a crime become an attempt on the same day. On March 12, 2020, Highland County Sheriff's deputies responded to a call at Genko's home and found a firearm with a bump stock attached, loaded magazines, body armor, and boxes of ammunition in the trunk of his vehicle. In a heating vent in his bedroom, they found a modified Glock-style 9mm semi-automatic pistol with no manufacturer's marks or serial numbers. He faces up to life in prison on the charges. A sentencing date has not been set. A British nurse who allegedly killed 7 babies in 2015 and 2016 reportedly tried to kill a premature girl 4 times and smiled after successfully doing so. Manchester Crown Court also heard how Lucy Letby, 32, killed 2 of 3 triplet boys. Wow, oh my gosh. At Countess of Chester Hospital. One of the murdered babies, who prosecutors called Child O, was stable but died within minutes of Letby entering the neonatal unit. Child O was found to have suffered severe liver damage. What the crazy, imagine that, triplets. And she kills 2 of them. She's standing trial for murdering 7 babies and trying to kill 10 more. She was accused of injecting air into the victim's bloodstream and giving them insulin. In one of the cases, the former nurse allegedly tried to kill a premature baby girl called Child 1 on 3 instances before she was successful, and afterwards she sent a sympathy card to the victim's parents. Medical experts determined that the premature girl did not die of natural causes. In court, prosecutors described how the victim's mother was bathing her recently deceased baby as Letby was smiling and kept going on about how she was present at Child 1's first bath and how much Child 1 had loved it. Wow. A pediatric consultant said he stopped Letby from killing a 98-minute-old baby who was born prematurely. The consultant reportedly caught Letby standing over the incubator as the baby's oxygen levels plummeted. The consultant allegedly found the baby's breathing tube was dislodged and that an alarm had been silenced. Letby reportedly did not help the baby or seek backup. The consultant said he was already uneasy with Letby being alone with the preemie as he started to notice a coincidence between unexplained deaths, serious collapses, and Letby's presence. The trial is continuing. Wow, what a monster. Okay, so there's a little more here about Quentin Simon. So it's been 7 days since Quentin Simon vanished. Quentin's mother, Leilani Simon, reported him missing at 9 a.m. Got that. Wait, let's get back to where this. So a media station obtained a video copy of an exchange between McCarta and Howell, which showed Howell accusing McCarta of taking the baby as well as slamming her for insinuating Quentin is dead. "This is my baby, not yours," Howell can be heard saying to McCarta on the video, which took place at McCarta's residence. McCarta denied knowing where Quentin was and said she never said the boy was dead. This is the babysitter. After a screaming match, Howell exited the home and left with a group of people waiting outside. "She barged into my house," this is the grandmother and the babysitter, "because I offered to cook for her and to put flyers out," McCarta lady said during a live Facebook video. "I didn't know getting people together and praying for Quentin was overstepping." McCarta previously said that she'd been taking care of Quentin and his little brother for around 6 months. She watches the children daily, she said, even when their mother isn't working. McCarta said she was supposed to babysit on October 5th, and they told her they didn't need her. And yeah, so I guess there was an exchange. But I think now we're done with true crime. We can go back to here. And wherever we are, we're there. Okay. Hi, Petty Patty. How are you? Into her bloodstream, do you mean? Yeah, it's terrible. Oh, let's see. Hi, Christy S. Hi, Cat with a Meow J. Hi, A Heart Made Wise. Oh, I think you're talking about something else. Petty Patty, right? Petty Patty. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think in the chat? It's crazy, right? All this. Oh, we're going to do something fun, right? I said we're going to do something fun to get, yeah.
Yeah, because it's really draining, all that terrible news.
All right, we're
It's
gonna
just,
we're gonna balance it. We're gonna balance it now. I
Okay.
knew I had something. Okay,
be the equalizer.
yeah. Let's see. Where did I have this? Let me see. Okay, let's go over. Oh, this is. I know what this is. I've got to go to the other one.
Can you hear my fan in the background? I hope it's not
No,
disruptive.
no, I don't.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah,
It's a noisy one on this side.
no, it's fine.
So to me, it's noisy, but I don't want to.
Okay. All right, so here's one of those new dilemmas. I have a friend, 29, who chronically uses a sexy baby voice, which is a high-pitched, syrupy, and incredibly jarring. She doesn't use it simply for greeting friends. Hi. She uses it for full sentences at a stretch. As women, we are often conditioned to speak like this, so I can see how she might use this voice when she's feeling nervous or uncomfortable. But this has been her default mode for years. I am embarrassed for her when I hear her talking to friends and strangers. Still, I may not be the best person to say something to her. I only see her a few times a month and never at work, where this voice would be unacceptable. How can I help her break this habit without offending her? And the answer, oh, you've come to the wrong advice column. It says, as a gay man with 50 years of experience constantly calibrating my masculinity for the comfort of others, I suggest you keep your unsought advice about your friend's voice to yourself. Promoting gender equality means giving all people the freedom to express themselves as they choose. Now, I bet you mean well, though it's hard to be certain. Your letter is largely framed by irritation at your friend. You don't provide any examples of her using this voice to cover discomfort, as you hypothesize, or to her detriment. Though you are certainly correct that a lot of gendered behavior is socially conditioned, the fact that you are aware of this phenomenon makes it stranger to me that you want to police your friend's voice, as if there was only one acceptable tone for women to use. What's next? Her clothing or body size? No, if you want to help your friend, be kind to her. Supporting her as she is will give her greater confidence to be the person she wants to be. Okay, and here's another one. I'm a 71-year-old widow with a caring new boyfriend of 5 months. We live in the same condo complex. It offers many free activities and clubs that we participate in. But when I suggest dates outside the condo, he asks, how much will it cost? And suggests we go Dutch treat. I am confused by this. He receives a good pension and Social Security payments. I'm willing to share costs, but I would like to be the one who makes that decision. Your thoughts? And said, no one told me it was gender week. Forgive me if I misunderstand you, but you seem to be suggesting that you should decide who pays for dates because you are a woman. Do I have that right? You don't mention being broke or shouldering other costs, such as regularly cooking or gardening for your boyfriend, for instance. I hope you will reconsider your view. We all like to be treated once in a while, but you are an independent woman. Why do you require a man to pay for you? And why should he? Try to enjoy your new relationship with this caring fellow on an equal financial footing. If you can't manage that, talk to him about it, but beats me how to make your request without him feeling like an ATM. Let's see. I became friendly with a guy who plays pickup basketball with my group about 6 months ago. We have a lot in common and started getting together to play board games and one-on-one basketball. Over the last month, he hasn't responded to my DMs or texts in our basketball group chat. But when I see him with mutual friends, he acts as if nothing's wrong. I'm confused and a bit annoyed. I'm not afraid of confrontation, but I don't know what to do. Thoughts? I'm glad you wrote. When people don't respond to my DMs or group text messages, fairly casual forms of communication, I sometimes read rejection or dislike into their silence, and I am often wrong. Still, I get your hurt feelings. Talk to your friend when you next see him, but without the hostile vibes of a confrontation. Ask him if he saw your text. He may be busy or uninterested, and he may view DMs and group chats as optional communications. A talk in real life should help clear things up. There's another one. My wife and I invited a new neighbor for dinner. She's accomplished, worldly, and affluent. When she arrived, we were surprised that she brought nothing with her, no bottle of wine or flowers. It seemed to us that she had broken the unspoken rule of bringing a host gift to the dinner party. We enjoyed ourselves, and she promised to reciprocate. When she does, my wife and I disagree about whether to bring her a gift or not. Your views? Many people bring token gifts to dinner parties to thank their host for entertaining them. It's a lovely gesture. But to punitively withhold a host gift because your neighbor was running late or simply forgot to bring one, for you, strikes me as petty and a violation of the open-hearted spirit of hospitality. Bring a host gift and stop keeping score. Okay. Let's see if we can. Our 15-year-old daughter is very headstrong. She's never been in real trouble, but she bristles against rules and authority, curfew, homework, appropriate clothing, you name it. Recently, she exploded when her younger brothers discovered her journal in the family room, and now she keeps it locked in a heavy black box that she found at a secondhand store. The problem? The black box turns out to be a gun safe. A friend of my husband's told us, "We're not worried that she has a gun. She helped organize a school rally to tighten our state's gun laws, but she refuses to give out the safe, and we don't want it in our house. Help." It says, conflicts with adolescents can be like endless games of tug of war, and the older and stronger they become, the less likely a winner is to emerge. It sounds as if your daughter was really upset that her brothers invaded her privacy by reading her diary. Still, as parents of minor children, it's your right and responsibility, actually, to set reasonable limits about what happens in your home. Bear with me now. Stop tugging on that rope. Acknowledge your daughter's valid distress and ask her to help you solve the problem with the gun safe in light of your shared philosophy about guns. Let her stash the diary elsewhere while you remove the safe, then negotiate a security system for her that wasn't built for weapons. More important, use this opportunity that's fallen into your lap to talk to your children about guns. Start by asking if she knew what the gun safe was. I wouldn't have. If none of your children are very young, go deeper. Ask them about gun violence and their sense of safety. Let them take the lead. You and your husband can help them synthesize their thoughts. That's probably more useful than any top-down declarations by you, and it may be the sort of meaningful give and take your daughter responds to. Another one, a friend makes her home available for short-term rentals during the summer. She crashes with me when she has paying guests. At first, I enjoyed the company, but now she drops off her bags in my guest room and goes out to dinner with friends without even including me. My hurt feelings have turned to resentment. Should I speak to her about the discourtesy of excluding me, or should I just ask for a cut of her rental money? Money rarely solves hurt feelings. Still, it's often floated as a possible fix. Would you really feel better if your friend handed you a check as she waltzed out to dinner, leaving you at home? No. You've introduced money, I think, as a penalty for the emotional bruising. But you'll do better by being open with your friend. Tell her it hurts to be excluded from dinners when she's staying with you. Ask her if you can join her. Now, there's always a risk in making ourselves vulnerable. She may say no, but if she agrees, you will have solved the very problem that's bothering you. Bullseye. I was raised never to appear empty-handed at social events. I like to bring food for the host table, and I always ask what might fit with their menu. Recently, we went to a dinner party at an aunt's house. I asked if I could bring a dish. She said it wasn't necessary. When I repeated my offer, she asked for crudité and hummus, which she never served. I later learned she was insulted that I brought food. How can I avoid a situation like this in the future? Try listening better. I love your generosity, but your aunt probably wasn't offended by the offer of food. She was more likely put out that you ignored her answer and persisted in asking what you could bring. Some people like preparing dinners on their own down to the last crumb. Let them. The next time, A host refused your offer of food, bring a small gift to be used later. Some fancy olive oil or a thriving pot of spearmint. You can also respect the spirit of the upbringing, I think, without being bossy about it. Okay. I work at a law school. Periodically, colleagues send all staff emails such as, Jane had an article accepted for publication. I'm happy to receive them. What I'm not happy about is the barrage of reply all messages congratulating her. Why do people do this? They want to congratulate Jane, write to Jane. People who click reply all tend to be less email savvy in my experience. It's hard to begrudge well-meaning people for that. They may not have considered that they're littering your inbox with messages to third parties. Bravo, Jane. Or perhaps they're lazy and don't want to look up Jane's email. You will probably come off badly, though, as grouchy. If you try to correct people in the email train, ask an office administrator to suggest a cleaner approach for staff emails addressed to a single person with the rest of the team on a blind copy. This prevents you from a flurry of messages for someone else. And that should give you some thinking. Okay. I think it's 3 o'clock. I think we're going to, hi, Eva Pope. I've got a busy day tomorrow. I've got to go to the dentist and get my crown done.
You've been waiting for that for a while.
Well, it was supposed to be Monday, then it was supposed to be Wednesday, and now it's Friday. And then I've got some stuff done after that. So I've got, hi, it's Pink. Hi, Nan Sullivan. How are you? Hi, Eva. Hi, everybody who slipped in. So we're going to go. If you want to come into the, I'm going to have to, I've got to start a new Zoom. Right? Yes. So I'm going to start a new one. We'll be on here while I start this. The number in Slack. It's probably just going to be a regular Zoom tonight because I'm asleep. Let me put a new meeting. You know, not those wild parties we normally have. So, what do I want to do? Oh, I want to get the number. The other day it gave me a weird link there. Where is the thing? Where is the thing? Here we go. Okay, so the number's there. Cat's got my tongue. Thank you. Okay, hello, Cat's got your tongue and my tongue and Gail. Hello. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. I don't know, I'm being a jerk.
Happening.
Not too much. We're going to get off and go on the Zoom, so I'm just put the new Zoom in. And, oh, here come some people.
That sounds so wrong.
Yeah.
That's not what Zoom's about.
Oh my
Study rooms.
Yeah, I know. Okay, let's see here. Oh, I can't find the live now. Oh, there we go. All right. Yeah. Thank you for everyone here tonight. Thanks. I hope things were interesting for you. And thank you to the moderators. Thank you guys for watching. And if you give it a like and on your way out the door, if you haven't liked it, share it if you can. We'll see you tomorrow. All right. And everybody take care. Prayers for Margot again. She's pretty sick. So we'll talk to you guys later, and prayers for all that need them. We'll see you later, and have a good one. Mary Ann Frontini, I just want to say, I didn't get, I think there was a misunderstanding. I sent you a payment request for the cranberry vases and didn't get that. And I think you got it mixed up with Nicole, and Nicole, I got to talk to you about something. But all right, we'll see each other's later. Love you guys. Bye.
See you, everyone.
Bye,
See you
everybody.
tomorrow.
Love you guys. See you later.